version of his old helmet that had been manufactured in the past 10 years, and the next steps are getting it reconditioned and recertified. But even if Brown can get the Shut Air Advantage helmet certified, it's not clear whether the NFL would sign off because of the outdated technology. Stephen A., was this all worth it for AB?
No, I don't. The thing that's so asinine about all of this is that he could have done all of this before making all the noise that he made. Had he done his research, had he been adroit and tenacious in pursuing, other avenues, it would not have come to all of this. And I think that it backfired because the attention that he clearly wanted to bring to himself came accompanied with shrapnel of criticism, the likes of which obviously has affected him to some degree. He talked about people in his locker room supporting him, et cetera, et cetera. Well, here's the question. Why the hell do you always need support? Because if you're just doing the right things and handling your business, first of all, you're going to have the support. But secondly, you never need to speak of it because it's going to religiously be there because everybody know that you're trustworthy and they can rely upon you, not just to perform on the field, but to be the leader that they brought you there to be. You are the face of the Oakland Raiders franchise. You are the face of a franchise that's going to move from Oakland to Las Vegas. I think that Antonio Brown is an all-world receiver, arguably the best in the game today, clearly one of the greatest that we've ever seen in the history of the National Football League. But unfortunately, he's had too many headlines for the wrong reasons. And I think that ultimately this has contributed along those lines. So you can go out there and perform, but there's no Super Bowl championship associated with his resume. And right now we're questioning whether or not there's going to be a playoff berth associated with his resume in the near future. And so when you look at it from that perspective, all we're going to be able to focus on is the headlines that he himself has created. And you wonder why, particularly with this latest incident, because clearly him doing his due diligence now is something he didn't exercise before all of this went down. And he should have. He could have caused a lot of people a hell of a lot of less stress.
Well, look, the answer is yes. Antonio Brown was worth it. And the reason for that is the cost was exceedingly low. You got a guy who's challenging Jerry Rice numbers in the record books for a third and a fifth. I mean, the reason the Raiders, eventually, if you're running a football team and you're like, oh, Antonio Brown, don't want those problems. And what, they want a first-round pick for him? Hell no. A second-round pick? No, they want a third and a fifth. And we get maybe the best receiver in football, one of the greatest receivers who ever lived, still in his prime, for a third and a fifth? Hard to say no. So was it all worth it? The question is, what was the price? Or you can't really say if it's worth it or not. Gave him away basically for free. If I'm running a football team and I can have Antonio Brown for free, I know he causes distractions. I know he could be considered a cancer in the locker room. Well, at least a distraction with the media. But Stephen A., he works his tail off and he produces on the field. And he would have to totally submarine a franchise in order for him not to be worth a third and a fifth.
But, Max, that wasn't the question. The question wasn't whether or not he's worth it. The question is, was all of this noise worth it for Antonio Brown? That's what I was answering. That's a different subject for another matter. All of this noise, was it worth it for him?
You're saying, is the media attention worth it for a guy like Antonio Brown? I think so. I mean, if one of the best players ever at a position, the whole question, it reminds me of Burfict. Now how I always harp on, I was doing Sports Nation at the time, and the whole question heading into that game with Pittsburgh in the playoffs is, will Burfict behave? And I was like, you think he's going to do something stupid with all eyes of the world on him? And we're asking the question all week, of course he's going to behave. And then they needed 14 yards, and he gave them 15 with an act of impulsive stupidity, right? Oh my God, he actually did it. The question with Antonio Brown, after all this, is he's going to have a new beginning in Oakland. What's he going to do? Oh my God, he did it again. So was it worth it from a media point of view, a guy of his caliber actually doing something just like we thought? No way. Is he really going to do that? And he did it right away. Yes, I would say he's worth the media attention. And then secondly, was he worth it for Oakland? At the cost of a third and a fifth, I would also say yes. I got to say yes to both questions.
All right. I don't think it is. I think this kind of backfired on him because of the kind of negative publicity he garnered for himself. Not to mention the fact that you got to remember he got a lawyer involved, got the agent Drew Rosenhaus showing up to practice with him. You threatening to retire when everybody knew that you were lying. You ain't walking away from $30 million over this issue. So you got exposed for lying about that. You got the antennas of the National Football League up, and now when you have a more cogent argument to make in the near or valid argument to make in the near future, the NFL is going to look at you with a raised eyebrow, and the Players Association ain't going to be too keen to help you either because they felt like you got them involved in a ridiculous scenario themselves.
I think the one thing that's positive here, though, is they need to find out what the deal is with Derek Carr and if they're taking him to Vegas. So now they have Antonio Brown. They can see if he's worth it or not. If they need to get a new franchise quarterback, kind of like when they brought in Amari Cooper with the Cowboys, that same kind of deal. So from that objective,
that's if he's on the field, Molly. That's if he's on the field. He's not on the field for bad feet or a helmet issue.
I know what you mean, but I think that's the main goal, to figure out Carr. It makes sense to me from that standpoint.
I agree.
But I hear you, Stephen A.
If I misinterpreted the question, Stephen A., and you're saying, was it worth it for Antonio Brown from his point of view? There's no way to debate that. You got it. Unless he needs so much attention, which clearly he wants a lot of attention, that he doesn't care if it's negative or positive, so long as we're talking about him. From that point of view, you can say, I suppose it was worth it for him. But if the actual point was to flex and show his power to get something he wants, or to actually wind up with the helmet he wants, then obviously it was a failure.
All right. I need to talk about Stephen A's friend now. So the Cowboys' big three of Ezekiel Elliott, Dak Prescott, and Amari Cooper are all looking for new deals, according to owner Jerry Jones. Those deals might be hard to come by. And Big D, take a listen.
My focus is on our team, not where any of these players' contracts are relative to another player. I'm not dealing in the market. I'm dealing with how to fit this team together. And so if the kind of advisor, if I'm listening to advice, is how to get all of these top players under the cap. It's not like me going out here and buying something that I have to decide, well, do I want to just spend that to have that? That's not it at all. It's that I've got to realize that I can let a DeMarcus Ware out of here because I don't have enough money because I paid it to too many others. That happened to me. And so I don't want that to happen again. And we've got some top talent here.
Listen, Jerry doesn't want to make the same mistakes as before. Stephen A., do you have a problem with his comments regarding the salary cap specifically?
Well, I don't have a problem with it because it's consistent with why he pushed for the salary cap to begin with. He wanted some level of course certainty. I mean, his position is consistent. He doesn't want to have to pay everybody, and cap constraints obviously limit what you can do for everybody while providing him core certainty. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's an advantage Jerry Jones. It highlights his commitment to making money just as much as it is to anything else, and you can decry that. We get that part, but you can't sit up there and say that his position is hypocritical, because it's not. He was reluctant to pay people in the past. He utilized enforcing a more stringent salary cap to facilitate that kind of thinking, or to buffer it rather, and now he's basically leaning on it as an excuse to justify his position. It's consistent whether you like it or not.
I have nothing to add. I mean, that's the point for me, Stephen A. I suppose I have to add something. That's the point for me. Jerry Jones can say all that. So long, as far as I'm concerned, he begins with, this is why I wanted a salary cap, so I wouldn't have to pay fair market value for players. So I'd have them fighting over the money, and I could go play Monopoly Man. Look, I'm constrained. My hands are tied. Right. Yes, your hands are tied, Jerry. You tied them. You made sure the owner's hands were tied so you can now use this excuse.
Correct.
All right, guys.
On purpose.
Death taxes and Andrew Luck getting hurt. Sorry, was that mean? After Colts owner Jim Irsay said Monday that Luck was dealing with a bone bruise, GM Chris Ballard clarified that the quarterback's calf injury has become a high ankle issue, and his status for Indy's season opener against the Chargers is uncertain. We know that's a serious injury. That got us thinking, who's the most overrated quarterback?
Overrated.
And I had to question that for a second. Overrated quarterback in the NFL.
All right. Stephen A., ready for this? I was going to go with Kirk Cousins because he got the big contract. And he puts up numbers but has not been able to produce wins, especially in the playoffs. I'm not going to go with Kirk Cousins. You know who I'm going with? Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston was the first overall pick in the draft. Jameis Winston has gotten into trouble off the field, the likes of which would preclude most franchises from saying, yeah, that's going to be the face of our franchise. But it hasn't precluded Tampa, has it?
No.
And now they have a decision to make. I know it's not as strong an argument as if they already gave him the contract, but it seems like they really want to. He has not produced on the field in a way that would make anyone say he's justified as number one overall.